Welcome to Window Dressing. I'm Madeline Jane Auble. This week, I bring you yet another bonus Lynch episode. This one dedicated to lovers on the run. Wild at Heart opens like Casino and ends like true romance, and it carries the pixie dust of Tinkerbell throughout. I would describe it as a hero's journey if the journey was paved by the promise of the American dream, Lover's Edition. Lynch wrote and directed Wild at Heart in 1990, adapted from the book of the same title by Gary Gifford. It stars Nicolas Cage as the super cool Sailor Ripley, and Laura Dern as Lula Fortune, the sexpot innocent with Barbie nails and kinky blonde hair that glows like a halo. The film opens on a ballroom-style dance hall at Cape Fear, a noir reference and a real place according to the title cards, that is somewhere between South and North Carolina. The Cape Fear unease weaves itself into the nefarious dealings of some of the players, starting with Lula's mother, Marietta Fortune, played by Diane Ladd. This blonde bombshell of a woman plays the devil with the blue dress on. She pays a young man to kill Sailor because, in Marietta's words, "You know too much about Lula's mama." Sailor witnessed a fire that killed Lula's dear daddy, a fire plotted and planned in part by Lula's mother. Sailor is wearing a sports coat, likely purchased at Lansky's in Memphis. It's gray and black and worn over a royal blue button-up. His girl with the heart of an angel and the body of a devil, Lula, is wearing a cotton summer dress with a drop waist in a bright coral shade that matches her round-tipped nails. She perfects this look with a black garter belt worn on one thigh. This garter holds up no stocking, but does the work of suggesting a wedding night ritual for its wearer, the innocent-esque, curly-haired cross between a harlot and a child bride, Lula. Sailor kills his would-be assassin, smashing his head bloodily and repeatedly against the marble floor of the hall. After the deed is done, he lights a cigarette and leans up against the ornately papered walls and points at Marietta. Sailor is arrested and housed at PD prison for 22 months and 18 days. On the day of his release, he calls his girl, but her mom answers and threatens to kill him again if he even thinks of seeing Lula. Lula walks in on the upper landing of the stairs after her mother gets off the phone. She is wearing black lace bike shorts and an oversized blouse. Marietta says, "You know who that was, and you're not going to see him ever." She says, "Like hell," and storms off. Marietta claws her large, bright nails like a coiffed animal with her perfect blonde hair and her wildly irrational reactions. It's hard not to root and relate to this female character as opposed to the younger woman hell-bent on protecting her man. Oh, the foibles of aging. Your alliances change without you even realizing it. But because this is all about romance, I will admire Marietta from afar and dive into the beauty bundle that is Lula. Lula arrives at PD to pick up her man. She is wearing a skin-tight black dress with wild curls in her hair and driving a black 1965 Ford Thunderbird convertible that the couple comes to share. She brings along Sailor's special snakeskin jacket, which was actually Nicolas Cage's own jacket. Sailor says, "Did I ever tell you that this here jacket represents a symbol of my individuality and my belief in personal freedom?" She says, "About 50,000 times." He says, "Stick it and steer." They tear off in a montage of metal music, lovemaking, and the embodiment of cool. Their pace only slows for a rape conversation inside their hotel room at Cape Fear. Post-lovemaking, Lula says, "Geez Louise, sailor, you're something else." She is standing in front of the mirror topless, and he is on the bed with the clock radio propped and balanced on his feet. She puts back on her black leather bralette-style top and tells Sailor a story. "When I was 15, my mama told me pretty soon I would start thinking about sex, and I should tell her before I did anything about it." Sailor interrupts. "But honey, I thought you told me your Uncle Pooch raped you when you was 13 years old." She says, "That's true, but Mama didn't know about that." As she says this, she has a flashback of herself as a young girl, mouth bloodied, splayed on the bed with curlers in her hair as her Uncle Pooch stood over her. Her mom walks in the room, sees this, and screaming at the top of her lungs, chases the monster away from her daughter. This memory dissolves into a fiery crash in her mind's eye, and she says in a monotone calm that is the hallmark of acceptance or unresolved trauma, that her uncle died in a car crash in Myrtle Beach 3 years later. She hears a woman in the next room laugh and is visibly disturbed by it. She equates the sound to the Wicked Witch. This is the hero's origin story starting to bloom before our very eyes. Lula is the hero. Marietta hires a PI to track and kill Sailor, who has, in her eyes, snatched up her lovely Lula. Her hired gun is none other than Harry Dean Stanton, or Johnny in this film. He worships Marietta, and what man could resist her Phyllis Dietrichson looks and deceptively innocent white frock? Johnny asks Marietta if Santos is involved in this, or rather, if she is still involved with him. Santos is a ne'er-do-well snake who helped Marietta set Lula's daddy on fire. Marietta feigns shock and dismay, and then reassures Johnny by way of a sexy floor crawl. This is right out of the top femme fatale playbooks. Get on the ground before him and wear white. You'll always win. Again, I find it hard not to see her as the film's ultimate heroine. Back in the hotel room, Sailor and Lula, Peanut as he calls her, get ready to go dancing. She paints her toenails and he shines his boots. Both tasks are completed while still in bed. At some point in their chat, Sailor says the most romantic thing any man has ever said to a woman. He says, "Peanut, I'm thinking about breaking my parole and taking you to sunny California." Giddy as a schoolgirl in lingerie, Lula screams, "Sailor!" She swoons. I swoon. It's the dream. She says, "I'd go to the far end of the world for you." As would I. He says, "Rockin' good news." The red-hot couple go to dance. Metal music and strobe lights pump as the lovers mimic fellatio on the dance floor. Lula is wearing her black leather bralette and sheer black lace pedal pushers and open-toed sandals to show off her freshly painted toenails. I haven't yet mentioned it, but the costume designer is Amy Stofsky, and she also did the costumes for Mulholland Drive. She had a knack for capturing sex appeal without forgoing innocence. It's sort of the magic of changing mores between second wave and a more sex-positive third wave feminism, a la MTV aesthetics. A man tries to dance with Lula. Well, a boy, really. Sailor only needs to point at the band to command total silence. The power of Cupid's arrow is in his every movement. He says to the young man dancing with his girl, "Are you going to provide me with an opportunity to prove my love to my girl, or are you going to save yourself some trouble, step up like a gentleman, and apologize to her?" Notice he says apologize to her and not to him, because although she is his girl, the disrespect is to her, not to him. She is not property in the traditional sense, just the breakfast at Tiffany's way, where two people who love each other belong to each other. Also, note that the betrayal is this young man's, not Lula's. Sailor doesn't blame her for dancing with him because he knows, as she already stated, "I'd go to the far end of the world for you." Lula's dance partner says, "You look like a clown in that stupid jacket." Sailor, or lover, as I have come to call him in my notes, says, "This is a snakeskin jacket, and for me, it's a symbol of my individuality and my belief in personal freedom." He says this with a Presley snarl that comes naturally for Nicolas Cage. Sailor hits the kid and pulls him up off the ground by the scruff of his neck and demands that he apologize to Lula. He does. All's well that ends well. Accountability is a beautiful thing. Sailor tells the band that they have a lot of the same power that E had, meaning Elvis. He says, "Do you know this one?" And like magic, the lead singer tosses down the mic and the band starts playing as Sailor begins to croon, "Treat me like a fool," like the king himself. And yes, Nicolas Cage did all his own singing in this movie. The ladies scream and swoon right along with me as Lula clutches at her blonde hair to steady herself in the wake of this powerful force called love. The American dream come true moment fades into another passionate love scene, which carries them through to post-lovemaking cigarette smoking and cigarette brand declarations. Lula says, "Sailor, do you ever think something and hear a wind and see the Wicked Witch of the East come flying in?" She states her brand allegiance to Cools. Sailor says, "The way your head works is God's own private mystery." She asks him when he started smoking. He says 4. By then, his mother had already died of lung cancer. Lula says, "What brand did she smoke?" He says, "Marlboro, just like me." The inherited good traits of the cowboy that used to loom over Sunset Boulevard and American masculinity were given to him by his dead mother, a woman who died in the pursuit of passing down the traits of loyalty, American West independence, and above all else, brand allegiance. This is a man we can trust. This is a man Lula can trust. By the way, my first brand of cigarettes was Cools. I eventually switched to Camel Lights in my 20s, and now I don't smoke at all, unless I'm sad or really happy. That hardly counts, especially in the realm of loyalty and character associated with the act of smoking that is illustrated above. Lula says to Sailor, "You remind me of my daddy." She tells him the story of how he died. It was in a fire. According to her mother, he doused himself in kerosene and lit a match. Sailor has no verbal response, but he touches her breast in a near-biblical act of devotion. The next day in the car, Lula is smoking. Sailor says, "That sure don't smell like a Cool." She says, "It ain't." One of them life lessons. Her deviation from her brand is assumed to be for health reasons, as menthols used to be rumored to leave crystals in your lungs. But I'm of the mind that it is not a life lesson in self-care, but a life lesson in loyalty. Something is about to look different than it did last night. And remember, as Sailor said, the way Lula's head works is a mystery for God. Perhaps her head divined something before it was apparent to even him. Meanwhile, Lula's hot-blooded, icy blonde mom is hiring a second hit out on Sailor. This one is at the hands of a slinky snake named Santos, the same Santos Johnny was jealous of and that Sailor used to be the driver for that placed him as the only witness to Lula's daddy's death. Santos has a powerful grip over Marietta, one that is quite clearly worth Johnny's concern. She directs Santos to New Orleans to find her daughter and Sailor. She says, "Lula can't stop talking about that town." He promises he will kill Sailor, but intimates he will also get Johnny. Marietta begs him not to, but it's too late. The jealous hearts of men are already beyond her control. Or perhaps, as her namesake suggests, she is marionetting those hearts herself. Santos calls the big boss, a scary man who is watching a topless teenage girl dance for him in the bathroom. Two clearly laid out character identifiers. Johnny drives down to New Orleans, listening to "Baby Please Don't Go" by Van Morrison on the car radio. The big boss man calls Juana Durango, a.k.a. Laura Palmer's mother, played by Grace Zabriskie. Twin Peaks premiered on network television the same year as this film came out. At this point in my life, it's impossible for me to separate the actors from their roles in that show. The boss has two half-naked tweens by his side who are discussing a stolen comb. One of the other girls in the harem is responsible for the alleged theft. He informs Laura's mom, an elder madam with a prosthetic leg and a Cajun accent, about the $2 silver hits, Johnny and Sailor. Marietta calls Santos and expresses regret over the implied hit on Johnny. He hangs up on her, and she, in a fit of hysterics that exceeds even the highest bar of soapy melodrama, goes into the bathroom and begins to mark herself with hot pink lipstick on her wrists, the way borderline personality disorder coping mechanism workbooks suggest you should. The tactic goes beyond mimicking self-harm and turns into a war mask of lipstick covering her face and body. As I have said before, she really is the star of this film. Sailor and Lula have drinks at a dark New Orleans bar with a jazz singer crooning in the background about a love that turned to flames. Sailor is recounting a tale of his sexual escapades to Lula in place of foreplay. As the story goes along, she asks one and only one question about the girl in question. What color was her hair? Sailor answers, jet black. Lula's face falls, but then Sailor says, but a gentleman prefers blondes. The identity associated with blonde hair is very difficult to describe, but suffice it to say, there is an appreciation for the ostentatious, Barbie brand beauty and Courtney Love style hyperbolics that goes into being and loving a blonde. It's more important than I could ever articulate. More montage lovemaking and driving follow each stop, promising hotter sex and deeper love the farther they run. Lula tells Sailor a story about her cousin Dale, a touched individual who loved Christmas so much it drove him mad. That and the rubber-gloved aliens that inhabited him. Crispin Glover plays Dale, with a dignity and sex appeal that is rarely seen in individuals who put roaches in their underwear. I met him in a Los Angeles courthouse last year, and let me tell you, his smile was bewitching even under those circumstances. Sailor says, "Too bad he couldn't visit that old Wizard of Oz and get some good old advice." Lula says, "Too bad we all can't." To which I say, "Oh, but you can, my children, and you are already on your way." Out of fear and regret, the self-inflicted lipstick queen decides to go meet Johnny in New Orleans with the hope of preventing the second silver dollar hit from coming to fruition. During this bout of hysteria-induced clarity, Marietta lies on the bathroom floor wearing black elfin-toed slippers reminiscent of Dale. While others are being led by the devil, Lula is in direct communion with God, or the Marlboro Man. She is sitting atop her seat in the black convertible, wearing a red lace teddy onesie over opaque black leggings and black cowboy boots. She is swaying to the music while Sailor pumps gas. Her golden blonde hair is lit like a halo. Sailor is sleepy, so God takes the wheel. And by that, I mean Lula decides to drive. While driving and flipping through the radio, her messages from on high begin to be intercepted by the devastation of one horrific news story after another. She pulls over the car next to a field of golden wheat. It's not poppies, but it carries just as much American allegiance lore. She says to Sailor, who has now been woken from his slumber, "Sailor Ripley, you get me some music on that radio this instant. I mean it." He puts on some heavy metal, and they dance about as if they are being hosted by Ricky Rackman of MTV's Headbangers Ball. The metal music fades into a Disney-fied swell as the setting sun lights up the field in a golden blaze of possibilities. Marietta meets Johnny in New Orleans. Too late to intercept the lovers, but just in time to witness the second hit come to fruition. She shares a romantic but unconsummated dinner with him. As a result of this breaking of bread, we learn from Johnny that Uncle Pooch, the child rapist, is who introduced Marietta to Santos. Meanwhile, the loving couple has finally hit the western desert. This important milestone on their way to the land of Oz, Hollywood, California, is marked by jet black skies and Chris Isaak's Wicked Game playing on the radio. MTV's Spring Break comes to mind, watching Helena Christensen splash around in the ocean in this video when I was a kid. Daisy Fuentes was usually the host. The couple is driving along when Sailor tells a shocked Peanut that he used to be a driver for Santos, and that is why her mother doesn't want them to be together. He says he doesn't know what she thinks he saw in that fire, but that's why he is persona non grata. Lula gets real quiet. This is the moment that the broken cigarette brand loyalty pretended. As she thinks silently in the passenger seat, she sees the Wicked Witch of the East flying alongside the car. But this time she sees her face, and it's her mother. Clothes appear scattered on the road before them, lit up by the glow of the headlights. A car accident becomes apparent on the side of the road. 2 corpses lay near the car. A young girl, bloodied and disoriented, runs around a Joshua tree looking for her purse, her wallet, or a bobby pin. She is wearing a black cropped top with medium wash jeans, a black leather belt, thick hoop earrings, dark short hair, and blood. She screams, "Where's my hairbrush?" And finally, she lies down and asks for her lipstick, which is in her purse, before the blood overtakes her ruby red lips and she dies. The girl is Audrey Thorne, played by Sherilyn Fenn, or Girl in Accident, as she is credited in this film. My dear darling Audrey, I love you. There are multiple moments in this film where a comb and then a hairbrush is mentioned from the mouths of babes, literal young women grappling with a loss of power or, in Audrey's case, impending death. It would be typical and perhaps correct to see these mentions of mundane items in extraordinary circumstances as commentary about the nature of tragedy. But I don't think that is what is going on with the hairbrush and comb. The core mythological content that is Lynch's paints lends itself to the fairy tale definition of hair as a power source. Our souls sparkle, our individual strands, our best ideas, in short, our vitality. To have the tool meant to care for such a powerful mane lost, as it is in Audrey's case, renders her unable to tend to herself, so she dies. The location of the blood is also largely from her head and matted in her hair, as she calls it, sticky stuff. The tween in the harem from before talked of her comb being stolen by one of the other girls. To me, this indicates that the individual power is lost when you're a sex slave among sex slaves for a monster. Sailor and Lula get back in the black convertible and drive down the desert road. The remainder of Chris Isaak's song Wicked Game plays till the end. But the words that end that song, No One Loves Anyone, are absent in this world's version. Because of course they do. Of course love is real. Of course it's worthwhile. Santos has kidnapped Johnny and turned him over to the voodoo sex cult he is in cahoots with, the leader of which is Laura Palmer's mother. He convinces a weepy Marietta that he didn't harm Johnny, and so the Flying Monkey and the Wicked Witch of the East unite forces, officially, without the kinder-hearted Johnny to stand in the way. Sailor drives him and his Peanut way out of the way, off of the yellow brick road to California and into the devil-infested desert of Big Tuna, Texas. He drops Lula off at a motel and then pulls up to a shack next to a tree next to a dumpster. The devil makes himself known by the crash of music that accompanies the car's engine quieting. Sailor knocks on the door, and a blonde Isabella Rossellini, a.k.a. Perdita Durango, answers the door. She has cotton candy pink lips, lavender eyes, delicately lined all the way around, and a black leather dress fit for a voodoo goddess or a sex worker on her break. Sailor is there to collect on their agreement. He used to be Santos' driver, and apparently she worked for him too. Or is she his daughter? I don't really know. Anyways, Sailor asks if there's a hit on him. She lies and says there's not. But she doesn't just lie. She weaves herself into said hit secretly. Satisfied, Sailor goes to the motel to see his lovin' woman. She is thrown up on the carpet in the room and looks scared, sick, and sad. Of course, one immediately knows she is pregnant, so I will skip the song and dance of parsing out that information. Later that night, the couple gathers outside the motel with a few of its other residents. This includes an impresario type named Bobby Peru, played by Willem Dafoe, with a thin mustache and a knack for demonic possession. A group of plus-size porn actresses, more than a few black hat cowboys, and John Lurie. Bobby totters off to get his dick wet at the anonymous porn shoot happening at the motel, and Lula and Sailor go to bed. She's still not feeling well because she's pregnant. This place isn't safe. Sailor knows it, and Lula knows it. She flashes back to her rape at her uncle's hands, but still, They do not leave. They don't go that night or the next morning. My advice to these young lovers is not to pause when you are on the run. You can't let go of the other person's hands when you're spinning. Love has a pace, a destiny, a timeline. Don't let go and don't stop. Otherwise, you may find yourself on the boulevard of broken dreams as opposed to somewhere over the rainbow. Sailor promises Lula he won't let things get worse. But like my dad always says, things can always get worse. The next day, Sailor is changing the oil in the car while Lula lays in bed smoking cigarettes in a black lace drop-waist negligee with red panties, pumps, nails, and lips to match. Her hair is worn half up and curled like crazy with a wild hair-sprayed bang that lifts my spirits from the root. The hotel room feels like Texas, unsafe but charming. Almost like the deserts of California, but missing that remarkable magic that comes from the comfort of the mid-century design from your own state. There is a knock on the door. It's the impresario with the thin stash and lifts in his boots, Bobby. He asks to use the bathroom. After, he says, "You got the smell in this room of puke. You been puking, little girl? You sick? Pregnant?" Lula is rightfully angry and frightened. He closes the door and asks her if she likes to fuck like a bunny. She recoils, but the pace of the recoil isn't quick enough for him, and he says that her clear no means yes. He forces her to say, "Fuck me." She won't. He says, "Say it. I'll tear your heart out, girl." This is where the demonic possession becomes clear. Not because he wants to rape her, for that seems as common as men themselves. It's a switch in his eyes, where the man becomes a monster. I have seen it happen in life, and apparently so has Lynch. Or rather, familiarity with the devil is sort of inherent in most humans' experiences. At least those of us who also believe in magic. Thankfully, this plot point doesn't include penetrative rape. Bobby returns to his body and leaves Lula alone to sob in the mirror. I'll say it again. When you're on your way to the Emerald City, you don't stop in Big Tuna, Texas. Bobby may have left Lula alone, but he heads Sailor off at the pass, luring him to the bar and presenting him with a fool's gold bank robbery plot to take place the following morning. When Sailor gets back to the motel, Lula is wearing white to devastating effect. This isn't about sexual purity. This is about angelic presence. And as Alabama Worley said in True Romance when correcting Clarence about a whore versus a call girl, there is a difference, you know. Sailor lets it slip that he was with Bobby. Lula says, and I quote, "Sailor, let's leave here." If they had left that night, Sail's belief in personal freedom and the American way would not have been intercepted by the darkness in the hearts of men. She says, "Bobby Peru is a black angel, Sail. You hook up with him and you'll regret it, if you live to." He says, "Thanks, darlin'. I know you've got my best interest in mind. I appreciate it, sincerely. I love you, but I gotta get some sleep now." She says, "This whole world's wild at heart and weird on top." She sobs quietly as she wishes he would sing her "Love Me Tender," the song reserved for the woman he's going to marry. She says, "I wish I were somewhere over the rainbow." He cries silently on the other side of the bed. The next day, Bobby shows up with blonde Isabella Rossellini as the getaway driver. It turns out her and Santos are rather cozy, and this easy money robbery plan is the final phase of Marietta's hit on Sailor. The robbery ends with Bobby dead, head blown off by his own shotgun, and Sailor arrested. Lula and her unborn child are taken by her mother in Santos. She writes Sailor while he is in jail about her growing belly and her plans to name the child Pace, regardless of gender. This name strikes me as a reference to the pace of love, the pace of running, the pace of a journey to somewhere over the rainbow. 6 years later, Sailor arrives in LA to meet his son and see his girl after getting out of prison. Mom is madder than a bat out of hell. She forbids Lula from seeing Sail. Lula tells her she is going to rip her arms out by the root and slams the phone down. Lula takes it a step further by tossing her drink in the face of a photograph of her mother. It's absolutely iconic. Watch out, Lisa Rinna. Lula is in town, and she throws hard liquor, not just rosé. Across the desolate train tracks of a downtown station, Sailor and Lula meet again. Overwhelmed with emotion, she pulls the car over, gets out, and quietly cries. Thinking the tears are from the disruption of his presence, Sail leaves. He walks away in his black cowboy boots and snakeskin jacket to face the world alone, leaving Lula calling after him. He is stopped by a roving gang who beat him down in an instant. While unconscious on the hot, desolate LA street, he is visited by Laura Palmer, a.k.a. Cheryl Flynn, a.k.a. Glinda. The Good Witch comes down from on high in her Barbie pink bubble that was born of the California sun to guide Sailor back to his true north. She says that Lula loves him, and he loves her. He says, "But I'm wild at heart." She says, "If you're truly wild at heart, you'll fight for your dreams. Don't turn away from love, Sailor. Don't turn away from love." That's what we here in Hollywood call divine intervention. Thankfully, Cheryl Flynn's version of Glinda, the pink glint in the eye of the City of Angels' sun, writes the rift in the fabric of their fated love story. Sailor serenades his bride-to-be. The song is Love Me Tender, reserved specifically for the woman he is going to marry. God bless Elvis, the Marlboro Man, and the real life somewhere over the rainbow. Thank you for listening to yet another Lynch-themed bonus episode of Window Dressing. I have decided against doing a memorial episode about Shannon Doherty right now, but I will return to the idea when I'm ready. In the meantime, I will get back to my Season 3 content next time with another episode of Window Dressing, Sirens and Gossip Rag Goddesses of the New Millennium. Please like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening, and follow me on Instagram for bonus content at Window Dressing Podcast. I'm Madeline Jane Auble.